Thank you. I am Brittany Huffman. I work with all the 5 grants under Workforce Development Training Fund, and then I help as needed under the Business Training and Support Unit as a whole. I do have Johnny Jones on here with me, who is my coworker who also assists with the 5 grants under Workforce Development Training Fund. So what I'm going to do is share my screen and let you guys look at the, oh, Johnny, will you please share the screen? We're still trying to get familiar with all the functionalities of Zoom. And since you're the host, Johnny, I think you have to share. It won't let me share. I will go ahead and put the link to the website, the Department of Workforce Services website, and that's what Johnny will be sharing. And then getting into the Workforce Development Training Fund specific landing page. Okay. So this is the Department of Workforce Services landing page. And then if you go ahead and go to divisions, hover over divisions, and there, the first one will be Business Training and Support Unit. So you'll go ahead and click on that. And this is just the easiest way to get to our landing page, the Wdtf landing page. So this is just everything that's under the Business Training and Support Unit. Workforce Development Training Fund is just a program under that BTSU. So you can see to the left there, there's a link for Workforce Development Training Fund. If you click on that, that will be the landing page for Wdtf grants. So here, let me try this. Okay, sorry about that. So here you'll see just kind of an overview of all of the grants under Workforce Development Training Fund. The purpose of all of the grants under Wdtf is to serve Wyoming-based businesses with their business needs. All of the grants are reimbursement models. 4 out of the 5 grants have Google-based applications. So that will be internship, apprenticeship, pre-hire, and internship. And then business training grant is the only one that's managed in an online grant management system. For now, that hopefully will change in the future. We're looking to get a system to incorporate all of the grants in one. That'll be down the road though. So I'll just go ahead and start going through kind of what we have on this landing page. So in general, all the grants have new parameters as of May 1st, 2023. We now accept applications during the first 7 days of every month. And those do change pretty frequently, the applications, as we get feedback from everybody. We do update the applications under all the grants pretty frequently. So just making sure that you grab a new application as you submit it is very helpful and decreases the amount of delays that it takes to review and process your application. Any application submitted before or after that window will not be considered. We are able to help you and provide technical assistance up until the submission of your application. But once it's submitted, then we aren't able to provide that assistance just due to the new process that we have and the volume of applications that we have. And as we go through these, and as you look at the rules for each of the grants, you'll see that the rules are still in place prior to these new parameters that we have. They're referencing the maximum amount, but the new parameters are supported in each of the grants now, and you can see those throughout each of the grants landing pages. So as you all are aware, you can register for our Q&A sessions that we host once a month. It's usually like the third week of the month, just to answer any questions, to go over all the grants for any new users or for any returning users who have questions. That's what these are intended for. And then before submitting any WDTF application, in order to be considered, the business has to be in good standing with unemployment insurance and workers' compensation, and then the Wyoming Secretary of State as well at the time that the application is submitted. So we just like to recommend that businesses kind of reach out to unemployment insurance, workers' comp, and follow up on the status of their Secretary of State account, just to make sure that you are in good standing and that there's no outstanding balances or anything that would put you in bad standing, because then that would place you ineligible for approval of that grant automatically. And if you're a brand new business, we recommend allowing about 2 to 4 weeks at a minimum for processing new registration or when updating any of the entity accounts. And then if you are applying for a business training grant, then it is a requirement under that grant that you are also in good standing with our labor management system through Department of Workforce Services, which is Wyoming at Work currently. And we just like to point out that it doesn't matter if an application is submitted on the first day of the month or the 7th day of the month, they will all be considered equally. There's no preference given. The sooner you submit, the more preference or anything like that. They're all submitted, they're all treated equally.
Brittany, I apologize for interrupting, but Brady had a question that is very pertinent to what you're discussing right now. I had a question about if evidence is required of good standing, or are we able to check that for ourselves?
So it does, in general, all the grants will be checked. So for business training grant, we have an interface with unemployment insurance, workers' compensation, Wyoming at Work, and Secretary of State. So that will all be done internally in the system. And then for the other grants, we do typically check those ourselves as well through our own process internally, as far as we go to a system and check there, and then if there's any question about the entity being or the business being in good standing with an entity, then we have point of contacts within the unemployment insurance or workers' comp or Secretary of State to double check. So that was a long answer to your question. So in short, you would not need to provide those good standing certificates, generally speaking, upon submission of your application. I hope that answers your question. I can't. Okay, I see the chat now. So, all right, and then just kind of going down this landing page here. Any applications that were denied due to good standing issues may submit new applications in the following months if the training event still takes place at least 30 days after the date of submission, and once the good standing status has been fully addressed and the business is able to get into good standing with those entities. We are looking at applications that are complete with all the appropriate supporting documentation. And we with the volume of applications that we do get, we really, those applications do need to be complete with the supporting documents very clearly stated and detailed in the applications in order to be considered. And then we do like to point out that if you haven't received any communication from a WDTF staff member within 2 weeks of the application window closing, so that would be after the 7th day of the calendar month, you may follow up with an email requesting a status update. Typically, we like to get the approval emails and denial emails out within that 2-week time frame. So if you don't hear anything, it is a good idea to go ahead and follow up with us. So as you keep going down, you'll see that there's different links here to the individual grants that you can go and take a look at. Then there's also this informational video here. And then further down, there's the preferred industries. So these are the 6 preferred industries that are designated by the Workforce Development Council as industries of focus in the state of Wyoming. And we'll get into how that affects the grants and the businesses as we get into the individual grants. And then that last piece there is just the contact information. I see Johnny already put the designated WDTF email into the chat. So that is just for all WDTF related inquiries, questions, anything like that can be sent to that email. And then internship specific questions can be sent to that other email that he has in the chat. And that is the DWS WDTF internship email. Okay, so then let's just go ahead and dive into that apprenticeship grant, that first link there. So the apprenticeship grant is specific to registered apprenticeship programs for the training component that the program requires. This program helps registered apprenticeship programs in Wyoming with training expenses that come with hosting an apprenticeship program, such as tuition, class materials, or potentially on-site instructor wages. You can see a lot of that in the budget worksheet that's linked here on this page. Each business needs to be registered with the Wyoming Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship in order to be considered a registered apprenticeship program. There are a total of 4 individuals in the apprenticeship team. Ivy Moore is the main point of contact, and you can see her contact information here, her number, and then any apprenticeship related questions can just go to the Workforce Development Training Fund designated email, since it does fall under that. And then as you can see, the links for different forms throughout the grant cycle can be found here. The application instructions and then the sample questions. If you want to just go ahead and click on that, Johnny, just so we can give them kind of an idea of what this looks like. This is something that we recommend you thoroughly looking through and just kind of getting a good feel for what will be needed in the application before you go and create the application. This just really helps you to kind of prepare to submit that application. So definitely go here first. And it just kind of gives you, the steps that it will take in the process for this grant. And then Johnny, can you go back to the main page, apprenticeship page? Thank you. There you go. And then when the application is available to submit, then that link there will lead you to the Google application form that you can go in and complete the application. We also highly recommend that you review the rules before submitting any of the applications for any of the grants. If you're a new user, definitely go in and get familiarized with the rules. And then again, let us know if you have any questions. And then if you go back to the main page, there you go. So that's kind of apprenticeship grant in a nutshell. Let's go ahead and move on to business training grant. And as I mentioned before, this is the only grant that is managed currently in an online grant management system. This is one of the more heavier used grants under Wdtf. And the main purpose of this grant is to help Wyoming businesses to train their employees to upgrade a skill level or correct any skill deficiencies within their current occupation. So again, you can see the link here to the rules for business training grant. And it kind of gives you an idea of what else is required to be considered under this grant. There has to be a direct relationship between the training and the trainee's occupation. There's a need for the skill upgrade provided by the training for the business to remain competitive in the industry or the economy. The skill upgrade that the training provides is required to enhance the business productivity, efficiency, or profitability, reduce employee turnover, enhance employee effectiveness, or enhance employee wages. So that's just kind of an overview of the purpose of the business training grants. Here are the current limits. $2,000 per training per fiscal year. And then if you fall under those preferred industries that we talked about earlier, one of those 6, then you would be eligible for $3,000 per training per fiscal year. And then as a business, you are eligible for up to $75,000 per business per fiscal year. As you go down a little further, these are forms and documents to help you through the creation of your account on the online grant management system, as well as the application, the final report, and everything in between. I would say if you are brand new to business training grants, start with the action items to apply for the grant. And this just really gives a high level overview of the steps that it takes to apply for the business training grant. So the first step would be to create an account in the system, and this entails making sure or registering with unemployment insurance, workers' comp, Secretary of State in Wyoming work, making sure that you're in good standing with all of those entities before creating this account really helps the process go by faster. But in general, it takes about 7 to 10 business days from the time that you submit the account, the business account, from the time that you create the account to the time that we are able to approve it. It takes about 7 to 10 days, and that really just depends on kind of the availability of the unemployment insurance and workers' comp staff. We do depend on them to get us the good standing certificates. So we usually say about 7 to 10 business days, but just keep in mind that it could be more or less just depending on the availability. And then the second step, once you get approved in the system, and just to give you an idea of what that would look like, you would get, once all the entities check out to be in good standing, then we would send you a link to confirm your email and set up your password. Once you do that, then you are fully approved and you're able to create an application. You can create an application at any point. You just aren't able to submit it until that 1st to 7th day of the month window. And then after you create the application, submit it, then once or if it's approved, then the trainee attends the training. The trainee must retain 45 days of consecutive employment after the training is completed. Once that requirement is met, then the business is able to submit a final report along with all the documentation 45 days after that training ends. We'll review that final report, make sure that every required document is there and all the requirements have been met. And if approved, then at that point, the reimbursement will be made. If you can go back to the BTG landing page, Johnny. So now that you kind of have an overview of the business training grant process, these forms are all for different stages of the grant. So there's the business account creation instructions, and the rules again, and there's also the grant application checklist for businesses. So if you're a returning user and you just kind of need a refresher, or even if you come and apply frequently, I would definitely suggest to have this grant application checklist handy every time you submit an application, just to make sure you're not missing anything. The instructions is just a more thorough guide on what needs to take place for the application. It gives screenshots and pretty thorough explanations and descriptions on what needs to what the steps are to submit the application. And then there's also a final report checklist that I would also recommend to use as you complete the final report, just to make sure again that you're not missing any documentation or required information. And then these other forms, like the employment verification sample, is if you, for whatever reason, if you're the owner of a business and you don't necessarily have a pay stub, then you can use this document that we've created to provide as sufficient documentation for employment verification. There's also a newer form that we've created for specifically online training, just because there's been a lot of questions around online training, just because there's so many different variables and different types of online training. So if you have even a hybrid where there's partial online, partial in person, this form is now required to fill out and provide in the application. And then the other forms on here, verification form for attendance. So these are the next 3 forms there are a document that you would upload at the final report stage, verifying the attendance of each of the trainees, whether that be a conference, an online training, or just a typical in-person training. This is just a form that we've created to help verify that and provide sufficient documentation for that if you aren't able to get your hands on anything that that would verify attendance. So then as you scroll through, this kind of lays out in more detail the steps that it takes for you to get to the application submission. The application must be submitted at least 30 days before the first day of training or travel. So if you do have travel, then the application needs to be submitted 30 days before that first day of travel, or it can't be considered. And then the latest that you can go out is 110 days from the first day of training or travel. Applications may request funding for 1 training event per application. There's no limit to the number of applications a business can submit each month, as long as you remain within the parameters and the limit for your funding limit per state fiscal year. And then we do like to mention to ensure that the start and end dates in the application include any free coursework, anything that, any modules before a training that's required to do the training, and then any post coursework when it comes to like a certificate exam, if that's included in the cost that you're requesting, to make sure to include that piece into the training period or the dates in the application. And then just to give you an idea of the process that the WDTF staff has for reviewing the applications, it does really depend on the volume of applications for that month and the funding that we have available. We have very limited funding for each of the grants. And so we prioritize based on preferred industries as determined by the Workforce Development Council. So that list that we looked at earlier. Typically, we look at the training events that take place during the month following the submission date. Those are usually reviewed first, but again, it does depend on the funding that we have available. And then all applications are reviewed based on the overall purpose of the business training grant and how each application fits within that purpose. Training that results in a certification or license or any kind of tangible training result is typically prioritized over conferences or trade shows or training that does not necessarily result in that tangible certificate or license or anything like that. Let's see. I think that is a good overview of the business training grant, and I will go ahead and let Johnny take it over for to give you some information on the internship grant.
Brittany, before we move on, Brady, there were a couple of questions that pertain to what you were just covering. Brady had a question about apprenticeship, asking, so this is just for roles that require an apprenticeship for licensure, electricians, etc.
That is correct. Yes, and you have to be registered with the Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship, and a lot of those types of things will get addressed at that stage, not necessarily once it gets to us in the submission of the application.
And then Kelly had a question about the BTG, the business training grants. Are owner employers or owner employees of a Wyoming-based business eligible for the program, and are out-of-state residents who are employees of a Wyoming-based business eligible for the program as well?
So the first question, are owner employees of Wyoming-based businesses? Yes, they are eligible. So owners of the business are eligible as trainees or to apply. You'll probably have to use one of the forms that I mentioned in here to verify your employment, because we do still require employment verification. I know it might not make a lot of sense to you because you are the owner, but just to have that documentation and record that you are indeed an employee of the business needs to be provided in the application. And then out-of-state residents who are employees of Wyoming-based businesses, in general, yes, as long as they are working in Wyoming, as long as they aren't remote employees or as long as they're commuting to the Wyoming location and working there, and as long as that can be shown in the application, then they are eligible.
Thank you, Brittany. One moment, let me get back over to. Are we at the right place? There we go. Okay, let's start with the internship grants. The internship grant, probably one of our most dynamic grants with WDTF. The internship grants are a great opportunity for businesses to provide us an opportunity for eligible interns to learn about an industry, to learn about their business, to learn about different roles within the business. And it also provides the interns an opportunity to contribute to the business itself. The internship is considered a practical learning experience, and it does involve some significant mentorship within the organization. It can be executed in a lot of different ways. One of the most popular is for the intern to migrate throughout the company doing different roles, as well as concentrating on one specific role within the organization. The internship, someone asked over the weekend about the definition of an intern, and it really has changed dramatically over the years. No longer is the intern solely someone who is a high school or college student. There are interns who are looking at later in life, looking at different career goals. So the internship can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. The training is a formal on-the-job training. The interns are hired by the company as employees, and the interns, the internship itself the intern application allows for up to 480 hours for a specific intern. The interns can use that 480 hours in different ways. It could be up full-time for a 40-hour week, which would allow for 12 weeks for the internship, or it could be part-time, which would allow for just about 6 months for the length of the internship. That would be negotiated, of course, between the intern and the business itself. Since this is a reimbursement model for internship, the wages are reimbursed up to $18 per hour. Businesses are welcome to pay more than that, but that is the limit for WDTF to reimburse for wages. That does come with the caveat of documentation for that. One of our favorite websites to use for documentation that we do recommend highly is ONET. ONET Online allows for the business to look at what the current wage being offered within specific states is. Of course, this would have to be a Wyoming business. So you'll note on the landing page, let's change that to electrical assistant. And you'll see a lot of different descriptions of that. And so you'll want to find the description that most closely resembles the internship that you're planning. Let's just go down here and we'll do maintenance and repair workers general. When you click on the specific job description, you'll see a plethora of different information about the job, the tasks, technical skills that are involved, activities, the whole idea about being to describe that role in as much detail as possible. If you go all the way down, and there's a lot of information on each one of these pages, if you go all the way down to the wages, you want to make sure that you're looking at Wyoming wages, and you'll also want to make sure that you're going to be looking at hourly. So we're going to start with the state wages, Wyoming. We're going to go there, and you'll see wages for the state. You'll see right here that these are the annual wages. We want to do hourly wages. And so that tells us that the median Wyoming hourly wage for that is $20. Now, of course, we cap out at paying $18 an hour. And since would be an internship, you would want to err toward the middle of what is currently being offered within the state of Wyoming. So halfway between 13 and 20 probably would be about 15. So that might be a consideration for when you're submitting your application and submitting what wage that you want to request. Want to make sure that the request is in line with what is currently being offered as wages in the state of Wyoming. Unfortunately, we do know that there are cost of living concerns in some areas. Unfortunately, that can't play into as a factor into the decision of what wage to be paid. Businesses are always eligible to pay more than that wage that we can offer. Businesses can have up to 3 internships per fiscal year. If the internship does cross over into the next fiscal year, it will count toward the 3 allowed for that next fiscal year. Those 3 internships don't have to be all at once. They could be staggered. When you're applying for the internship grant, one of the things to remember is that since this is application on a monthly basis for a 7-day window of each month, if you know that the internship is going to be, you would like it to start in 2 months, you could apply for, let's say you were looking at a start date of May. You could put an application in February. It may be denied because there may be more pressing or more imminent start dates for internships, but then you will have the opportunity to reapply the following month. And there'll be a lot of factors that go into, as Brittany mentioned earlier, a lot of factors that go into the approval of applications, applications that are detailed, accurate, and complete being some of the most important. The interns, very often businesses will have someone in mind that they want to fill an internship. One thing to consider is that the intern that you have in mind must have been hired as an employee for the business no more than 30 days prior to the submission of your application. And they must have been hired specifically for that role. After the submission of the application, if the application is approved, you will have 2 months to secure that intern, recruit that intern. After 2 months, then the grant, if the internship is not filled, then the grant may be closed. Of course, Wdtf will open the lines of communication with the business to discuss what issues they may be having in finding qualified personnel for the internship. We mentioned earlier that mentorship is very important to the success of the internship, and mentors can only be responsible for 2 interns at a time so that they can provide adequate supervision during the internship. And as always, with each one of the grants, there are internship application instructions and sample questions. And the internship grant application, as with several others, is a Google form application, and a lot of really valuable information here at the beginning of that. You can start an application and come back to it later. You can always work on an application, but once the application is submitted, you will not be able to go back in and make any edits. We do want the application to be complete and detailed at the time of submission. The Google Form applications are reset after each month, so applications won't be able to be carried over from one month into the next. So that's something to be mindful of when you are creating an application. It will only be available to be edited for 1 month. Internship rules, again, as with each one of the grants, very, very important. And we talked about a little bit about ONET. ONET doesn't have to be this the wage documentation source. It could be Indeed. It could be other of the job sites that provide adequate information about wages currently being offered, but they must be in the state of Wyoming. I think that's about it for right now for the internship grant. Let's jump over to the pre-hire grant. The pre-hire grant is really embodies the whole philosophy of Wdtf, in that this really is a synergy of communication and a synergy of collaboration. The pre-hire grant is designed to allow an area, a community, an industry to address a significant absence of a specific skill level. The uh, applicant might be um, an area um, training provider, might be a business that instigates this. But if if a business or an industry is having significant problem finding qualified personnel, and they feel like that the personnel that are available need to be trained prior to uh, being hired, then the business would approach a training provider about providing that training. And so that begins the communication for the pre-hire economic development grant. It is designed to train people specifically for uh, a skill level that is absent for a specific industry or in that area. The individuals who go through the training must be either unemployed or not employed in that area of the skilled level training. For example, this should be designed for people with no experience in that specific area or with that specific skill level. The training entity that delivers the training, um, uh, the training itself can result in certification, it can result in licensure, or it could result simply in skills that would potentially provide for employment for the individual. The businesses play another major role in the activity of the pre-hire grant, in that businesses agree to interview and seriously consider hiring individuals who have gone through the training uh, after they intend to seriously consider and interview those individuals with the idea of providing a specific number of employees that they would potentially be looking to hire. That provides the basis of how many people would be available to be trained. Uh, the local economic development entity also plays a major role in that they provide access and information about the economic development potential of the community and potential of the area. And they, of course, have an already strong network within the specific area or community. And of course, the local workforce development center within that area, within that community, plays a huge role in the recruitment of potential workers and as well as the placement of the workers once they go through the training. The grant itself is also reimbursement of allowable training expenses. And if you look on this page, you'll notice that in addition to the application instructions, um, if you click on that application instructions, there's a budget worksheet that is provided so that you can note the different categories. The tuition or registration is an allowable expense, class fees, fees for the licensure and certifications, and any other screenings that are required for placement or for licensure within that grant, or excuse me, within the training provided by the training itself, rather. Back over here. And we do encourage you to go through each one of the web pages for the different grants. And there's such a wealth of knowledge. These are the most current, this is the most current information that is available for each one of the grants. It is available on the website. So it always is the first source for looking and learning about each one of the different grants. That's again, just a very brief overview of the pre-hire economic development grant. Brittany, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Johnny. So I'm just going to briefly go over the pre-application funding opportunity that we have under Workforce Development Training Fund. So the pre-application is a dual application made by both the economic development entity and the collaborating business to either attract a new business to Wyoming as part of an economic development initiative or to expand an existing business within Wyoming. If you have interest in this grant, we just recommend that you reach out to us via email or phone call to start the conversations around how your business needs fit within this grant. It's an involved process that takes some time to kind of gather the information and the business needs and get all of the collaborating entities input in this, and then to obligate that funding to utilize within the business training grant or the pre-hire grant. So with that is kind of the overview of all of the grants and programs under Workforce Development Training Fund. I will go ahead and open these last 10 minutes or so up for any questions that you have. And again, you can do it via chat, or you can just ask verbally, or whatever your preference is. Anybody have any questions?
Brittany, one thing that I overlooked that I was going to mention is that just a reminder to everyone that that one of the reasons we stress the window of the first 7 days and stress the idea of really learning and reading as much as you can about these applications, we can help, and we will work very hard to assist you in any way that we can in the with the technical aspects of the grant preparation, answer any questions up until the grant is submitted. Once the grant is submitted, then of course we won't be able to provide assistance. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us via email or via phone very early on in the process, so that we can have ample time to work with you to answer your question and to provide any assistance that we can.
Yep. Thank you, Johnny. We do have a question: what is the major difference between the apprenticeship grant and the internship grant? And I'll go ahead and answer that as best as I can. So the internship grant really focuses on a learning opportunity for an individual. Ideally, we want the internship opportunity to be a learning experience, a structured learning experience that exposes them to the industry, to the area that they're looking into becoming employed. And then hopefully, you know, they like it and they can be employed with the applicant or the business hosting the internship. However, it's not required that they retain employment with that business because it is a learning experience, and it's just a short-term employment opportunity for them to, like I said, expose them to that area or that industry. Whereas an apprenticeship is really focused on getting people into that area and getting them employed within that trade or field of that career field, and has that certificate or license behind it. I hope that kind of clears it up on what the difference is. Does that help, Amanda? Okay. She has one more question, so I'll go ahead and give her some time to type.
Brittany, would the time frame of the internship and the apprenticeship grant play a factor, the internship being a little bit more of a short-term experience for someone maybe, you know, trying to expose themselves to a different industry or a different role within a business, and the apprenticeship being more of someone committed long-term to that field, to that occupation, I guess?
Yep. That's a good addition. Okay, if I have an employee that I would like to have go back to school for a specific field, can this be handled by any of these grants? Not, I mean, I guess it depends on what the intent is, or what would you be requesting? Because internship covers the wages for an employee, and usually those are not employees that have already been hired and are long-term employees. Again, it's a short-term it's a short-term employee, and then it kind of like a new opportunity for them, not necessarily one that has already been on payroll within the business. The business training grant might be a good fit, depending on, again, what the intent is and what the courses will look like and how that relates to their occupation. So we can definitely either stay on this call after, nobody else has questions, or we can set something up separately so we can chat about your individual need and question. Okay, so I believe I have your email, Amanda, as amanda@brownsugar.coffee. Is that correct? I lost my, there we go. Okay, so I can go ahead and send you some times, some available times that I have today, this afternoon, and tomorrow, if that would work, and we can set up a Google Meet. Is our preference to go over some of your options. Okay. All right, does anybody else have questions? Okay, well, if that's it for questions and nobody has anything else, then I guess we'll go ahead and close this meeting out and reach out to our designated Wdtf email or via phone call if you think of any questions or have anything that you need us for. Thank you all for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.